Don't forget to like and subscribe to Jolie Knots Crochet. Share with your friends. Hit that little notification bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our videos are available in left and right-handed tutorials.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal and today we are going to be making this really beautiful, soft, squishy, fluffy angel baby shawl. Now the stitches that we're doing this out of is the feather stitch. I've figured out how to do the increasing and how to get it started on one. Typically we see the feather stitch just going back and forth in a straight line. I then created a feather. And I'm going to teach you how to put a feather border with one feather between each feather stitch. And here is what your feathers will look like. It's extra beautiful, extra squishy, extra fluffy. It is just marvelous. I'm in love with it. I love it a lot. My daughter loves it. The yarn that I'm using today is Yarn Bee Delish Boutique. Now, this is a pretty large skein. It's 5.3 ounces, 590 yards. For this size here, I made this one for my daughter, so it's 48 inches wide. All right. Now, as far as the length goes, it's about 26 inches long. So 48 inches wide, 26 inches long, a little bit bigger than that actually, but that does count the feathered end. And of course you can grow this to any size that you like. With this skein, I used about one and about maybe a quarter of it. I used the rest and part of it to make the little swatch for the tutorial. But other than that, this is my second ball. Now, this is a 3-weight yarn. This is 90% acrylic and 10% alpaca. Now, I'm using a 6mm hook because I want my feather stitches to be fluffy. I wanted them to be bigger. The color on this one is Tart to Tango, right? And this one I just picked up on Hobby Lobby at clearance this last summer. So I'm sure you can find the colors. I don't know if the color's discontinued or just Hobby Lobby is not going to carry it anymore, but that's what we used. So you will also need a tapestry needle, your scissors, and of course your yarn and hook. So go ahead and grab your materials and we're gonna get started. Okay, so in order to get started, we're going to make a magic ring. I make my magic rings with a backwards slip knot. So that way I can pull on my tail end and my ring will adjust. Alright, so I'm going to take that ring onto my hook and I am going to chain 2 to get up to the height of my stitch. Now I'm going to put 3 double crochets into my ring. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to chain 1 and put 3 more double crochets. Okay, so now I can pull on my tail end and my ring will close. And this will be the end of your first row. You should have 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then 3 double crochets. So we're going to chain 2, that's not counting as a stitch. Turn your work, and we're going to put a V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet into your first stitch. Now you're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and into your next stitch double crochet. chain 1, and now you're up to your corner space. So you're going to put 1 double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. So we're V-stitching into our corner. Once you have your V-stitch into the corner, you're going to chain 1 and double crochet into the first stitch. Now you're going to chain 1, skip 1 stitch, and double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1 and double crochet into the same stitch, so it just formed a V. Now this should be what the end of your row 2 should look like. You should have 2 V-stitches separated by a chain 1 space. You should have a V-stitch, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. Chain 1, V-stitch in the corner, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, V-stitch at the end. Now you're going to chain 2. That does not count as a stitch. Turn your work, and we're going to double crochet into the first stitch. Now we're going to create our first feather stitch. When we create our feather stitches are going to have 3 legs. So in this round, our first leg is going to be in this chain space. Our second leg is going to be in the same stitch that this V-stitch is worked into. And then our third one is going to be in this chain space. So we are yarning over, going into the stitch, and pulling up a loop. Now into this stitch we're going to yarn over, go into the stitch that the V-stitch is worked into, and pull up a loop. Now you want to make sure that you pull your loop up to the height of your work. You don't want your work to start smashing. Now we're going to yarn over and go into this chain space and pull up a loop. You should have 7 loops on your hook, and now we're going to yarn over and pull through all 7. Chain 1 to close. Now we're going to do another feather stitch. This time our feather stitch is going to start in the same chain space we just worked our third leg into. The second leg is going to be into the skipped stitch from the first round, and the third leg is going to be into this chain space. So yarn over, go through your first space, yarn over, go through your skipped stitch from the previous row, yarn over and pull up to the height of your work, yarn over and into your next chain space, pull up a loop. You should again have 7 loops on your hook, and you're going to yarn over and go through all 7. Chain 1, and we're going to do that one more time. On this feather, this is going to be where our first leg is. Our second leg is going to be in the center. Our second leg is going to be into the corner space from row 1. And then our third leg is going to be into the corner space from the round we're working now. So, first leg, yarn over, second leg, yarn over, and your third leg. Yarn over and pull through all loops. You should have 3 feather stitches going up the starting side. Now we're going to chain 2. And into this same space, we are going to start our feathers going down the other side. So our first leg is going to be into this center. Our second leg will be through the center at round 1. and then our third will be into the next chain space. 1, 2, make sure you pull up your loop, and 3. Yarn over and pull through all of the loops, chain 1, yarn over through your corner space, yarn over, go through the corner space from the previous round, pull up a loop, yarn over, and now we're going to go through this next chain space. And pulling through all of our stitches. Chain 1. Our next feather stitch is going to be through our chain space, through our skipped stitch from the previous round, and through our last chain space. Now once we work our feather into our last chain space, that's when we know that our round is done. So chain 1 and then put a double crochet right on top of your last stitch. And this is what the end of your round should look like. You should have 3 feather stitches on each side. Now you're going to chain 2, and that does not count as a stitch. Turn your work, and we're going to put a V-stitch into the first stitch, now to start our feather stitch on this row, our first leg is going to be here before the feather stitch. Our second leg is going to be into the chain space right below that. And then our third leg is going to be on the other side of the feather stitch. So we're kind of grabbing around it. So yarn over our first leg, second leg, third leg, yarn over, pull through all. Chain 1. Our first leg will go before the feather stitch. Our second one will go into the chain space directly below that, and then our third one's going to go after the feather stitch. Now we're going to yarn over and pull through all. Chain 1, and this will be the last feather stitch of the row. So into the same one we just worked, the chain space directly underneath it, and then the last leg will be into your corner chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over and pull through all of your loops. Chain 1, and now we're going to put a V-stitch into your corner. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. From here's where we're going to work our 3 feather stitches going down. So you're catching the drift. First leg before the feather, pull up a loop. Second leg directly underneath that, which in this case is your corner space from the row before. And then your third leg is right after your feather stitch. Now yarn over and pull through all of your stitches. Chain 1. Next feather right before, yarn over, chain space directly underneath, yarn over, and then right after. and pull through all loops. And now our last feather stitch on this side is going to go into that chain space, the space below, and then after our feather. Yarn over, pull through all loops, chain one, and we're going to put a V-stitch on top of your last stitch, which is the double crochet from the previous row. So 1, and 2. This is what your 4th row should look like. You should have 3 feather stitches on each side. Getting started on row 5, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and we're going to put a double crochet into our first double crochet. Now, this is the first row of our repeat row. Most of this we have already, so let me show you exactly what we're doing. It's just a slight change. Our first leg is going into the V-stitch. Our second leg is going into the stitch that our V-stitch was into from the previous round. And then our third stitch is going to go into the chain space after our V-stitch. So you should have 7 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all, chain 1, and let me show you the next feather placement. Before your feather stitch is your first leg. Directly under that into the chain space, that's your second leg, and then your third leg is directly after your feather stitch. Pull through all, chain 1. We're going to do that another time. 2 into the chain space, after your feather, yarn over, pull through all, chain 1. We're going to work that around this feather now, so here, here, and here. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over and pull through all, chain 1, and now we're at our V-stitch corner. So we're going to increase 1 feather around this stitch. So before your double crochet, yarn over, and now this next leg is going to go into the center space from the row before. Your third leg is going into the center space of the row we're working. Yarn over, pull through all, and now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to work down the other side. So first leg into the corner, second leg into the corner before that, and third leg after your double crochet. Yarn over and pull through all of your stitches, chain 1, and let's feather again. Through your first chain space before your feather, your second leg is going back into the corner space 2 rounds below. And your third leg is going right after your other feather. Now we'll work our feathers to the end as usual into the first chain space just worked before our feather, the chain space directly underneath it, and the chain space directly after it. Yarn over, pull through all, chain. And another feather. Chain 1, and now we are up to our last feather. So we're increasing one feather at our V-stitches. So we'll build our feather around the V-stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Your second leg is going into the same stitch that the V-stitch went into. Pull up a loop, and then into your V-stitch, yarn over through all, chain one to close, and a double crochet onto the last stitch. Here's what your work should look like after this round. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feathers on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the way our rows are going to be worked, we're repeating 2 rows. I'm going to repeat the same amount of feathers. We went straight from our corner, chain 2, feather, 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 and then a double crochet. Now your next repeat row is going to have a V-stitch. So chain 2, turn your work, and put a V-stitch. This is going to be your increase row. We're setting up for an increase. Now our first feather is going to be right before this feather, directly underneath it, right after that feather. We're going to repeat it to the end, or to your corner space. Okay, so here we are at our last feather stitch. And you're going to put a V-stitch into that corner. And then we're going to start our feathers going down again. So, into the corner, yarn over. This one is going through the corner again. Pull up a loop. And on the other side of the feather. 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. And our last one. 1, 2, 3. Pull through all your loops, chain 1, and we are V-stitching into our last stitch. All right. And this is what your work should look like. Now you can give your stitch ends a little bit of a tug so they can relax a little bit and get their shape. You should have 2 rows of 3 feather stitches each, followed by 2 rows of 5 feather stitches each. So right now, the row that we're going to do, the repeat that we're doing, should have 7 stitches. Okay, so when we get started on our feather border, you want to make sure that you are stopping on a row that does not have V-stitches in the middle or on the ends. Okay, so how to get started is we are going to chain 2, and we're going to put a double crochet into this first space, and then we're going to put 1 more double crochet. So you should have 2 double crochets into your first chain space. Is chain 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, working into our chain, we are going to double crochet, but we're not going to finish our double crochet. So we're going to have a lot of loops on our hook, okay? So we are going to yarn over. We're going to skip the first chain, and into the second chain we're going to put a partial double crochet. So yarn over once, yarn over, pull through, and now we're going to do that same thing into every single stitch. We're going to do that into every single chain. So we should have 7 partial double crochets all the way down our chain. And there's the last one. Now into the top of the double crochets, the 2 double crochets that you just made, we're going to put 2 more partial double crochets. So 1 partial double crochet into each of those. You should have 9 partial double crochets all the way down with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 loops on your hook. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take all of these loops off, but not all at the same time. So we're going to yarn over and pull through 1 in the beginning, and then all the rest of them are going to be 2. So yarn over, pull through 2, 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 yarn over, pull through 2. So we're doing that all the way to the end until our last loop is off. So this is what your feather should look like so far. Now we're going to put a picot. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. But since we kind of flipped our feather over, we just got to flip it back over. And this last loop that came off, that's where we're going to put our slip stitch. So we're going to slip stitch into that space. Should be kind of like a big hole. Now I'm going to pull my slip stitch tighter. I just don't want it to be too loose. Chain 1, and now I'm going to single crochet all the way down my chain that I built my feather on. So I'm going to put 1 single crochet into that big space, and then into the chain space where each stitch is, that's where I'm going to put another double crochet. That's where I'm going to put my single crochets, and I'm going to single crochet all the way down. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is our last one. So we should have 8 single crochets down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a back post double crochet. Now we are doing that to help create veins and also to work around this feather stitch. So what we're going to do though, it's going to be a little bit different. You If you can see where this last double crochet was, and then the space inside where your stitch gets worked into, I want you to put your hook through there. And we're basically just holding these together. And now you're going to yarn over, go through the back of your chain space and through the chain space on the other side of your feather stitch, and then you're going to work your back post double crochet. So we're pulling up one, and then now when we yarn over and we pull through the next 2 loops, you're going to go through that back post, and then we finish off with our last 2 loops on the outside of it. This is what the back of your feather will look like. This is what the front of your feather will look like. How gorgeous is that? So in between each feather stitch, we're going to put a feather all the way down. Okay, let me show you one more time. 2 double crochets. It's actually really simple once you get the hang of it. 2 double crochets, right? And now chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Second chain from the hook, and every chain space, a partial double crochet. Our last 2 partial double crochets will go on top of the 2 double crochets that we started with. Okay? You're going to need to manipulate your work a little bit. It is going to twist up by working backwards, and then we're just going to have to really untwist, I guess you'd say. So yarn over, pull through 1. Now take off 2 loops at a time. Okay, now chain 3. Flip your feather back over and into this last stitch that we took off. That's where we're slip stitching. Pull your slip stitch a little tight. Not too tight, we just don't want it to be loose and saggy. And then single crochet the first one into that same space, and then 7 more single crochets going down your chain space at the bottom of each of those partial double crochets. So you should have 8 total. All right, so that was our last one. Now, if I look at my double crochets, this is the whole space at the top of my double crochet, and in order to link them, I'm just putting my hook through it. Now I'm going to yarn over my hook and do a back post double crochet around my feather stitch. And there we have our second feather stitch. Okay, so remember, we're working facing the wrong side, and the right side will be your opposite side. So with working over our double crochets, it's going to help to give our feathers a curve. Working our back post double crochet is going to help give our feather a vein. Now let me show you on the one that I've already made. When we start to work the other side, our feathers are going to be a little bit different. So the one we're working now has the extra little hump to curve this way. And then when we get to this side, I'm going to teach you a different method, mostly all the same, but we got to curve it the other way. So it's going to be a tad bit different, okay? So go ahead and work your feathers all the way down. Your corner space, you're going to work one feather the same way, and then that's when we're going to switch directions. So you're going to continue about working your feathers down, and I'll meet you back at the corner. All right, I've just finished my last feather stitch of this side. Now I don't have a feather in the middle to do a back post double crochet. So what I'm going to do is just go into the top of that double crochet, yarn over, and just create a linked double crochet. And that's it. That's all we're doing, is linking it up. So your feathers are going to have a little bit of a ruffle. You can leave them like that if you want, or you can block them. I steam blocked mine, and I just put a needle in the end of each wood and used steam on it, and steam is going to be more permanent after, if you know, when you wash it. Okay, so getting started on the feathers, going up the other side of our work. We're going to start it all out the same. So 2 double crochets, chain 8, seven partial double crochets down your chain space, or down your chain, 1 into each chain stitch. And now on top of our double crochets that are right here, we're not double crocheting. We are actually we're going to skip the first one, and then into the second one, we're going to slip stitch. Well, we're going to pull up a loop, not technically slip stitching, but we're just pulling up one loop. Now to take all of these off, we're going to do the same thing. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through, 2 at a time until they're all off. So the only difference with this one is we're not doing partial double crochets over the 2 double crochets that we started with. We're just doing that 1 yarn over. So we're still going to chain 3. We're still flipping our feather back around. We're still slip stitching it. And we are still single crocheting into that first space, and then also the 7 underneath the 7 stitches, or the 7 partials. Single crocheting down. But when you get to your last one, this is my last stitch to work into, I'm putting 2 single crochets in that one. Help it get a little bump. And now we're going to do the same thing, going through the top of our double crochet, yarning over, and back post double crochet around your feather. Okay, so that's the feather that we're working down the other side. I'm going to show you one more time. 2 double crochets, chain 8, partial double crochet all the way down, just skipping that one first chain, No more partial double crochets after that. We are just going to skip that first double crochet and into the second, go in and pull up a loop. We should have 9 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the first one, and then take off 2 loops at a time. Chain 3, flip your feather back over and into our long space, slip stitch, chain 1, single crochet. So we've got 1 single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and into our last chain space we're putting 2. Remember that, 2. Put your hook into the top of the double crochet, yarn over, back, post, double crochet around the feather. And that's it. That completes the feathers that you're going to do going up this side. So remember, you should have 1 feather in between each feather stitch here. And here is what your feathers will look like. It's extra beautiful, extra squishy, extra fluffy. It is just marvelous. I'm in love with it. I love it a lot. My daughter loves it. All right. Thank you everybody for watching Jolie Knots Crochet. I'm Crystal. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notifications bell so you can get notified when new patterns release. All our tutorials are available in left and right-handed tutorials.